Hello, you fabulous group of people in YouTube land. I hope you are having a lovely day. So, pedals. Let's talk about pedals. And I want to talk about something very specific with pedals, and that is pedal design and layout. What type of pedal design and layout do you personally like? Simple question, but one that has a vast array of complexities to the answer. So, most people associate guitar pedals with one of two basic shapes. This type or this type. So your standard Boss or an MXR or, I don't know, someone like EHX. Both of them, very standard. People tend to recognize those straight away. But that's not all there is. Obviously, we have fuzz faces, which are like landmines. We have rats that are bricks. We have these kind of size pedals, you know, when you compare to this. We have mini pedals, little diddy pedals. We have pedals with 2 buttons. We have pedals that are landscape, not portrait. We have all kinds of pedal shapes. They come in big, small, medium, huge, ridiculous, star-shaped, all kinds of silly things. So I wanted to kind of ask you what you prefer and explain to you what I prefer and why. But first of all, certain things that dictate these requirements. So the first one is, now that I'm playing live a lot more, I need pedals that take up not too much space, because as you can see from the picture of my pedal board here, I don't have a great deal of space to be working in. And I'm already using a multi-effects unit, so any pedals that I have to have a real specific use and have to take up not very much space at all. I also have slightly large, clumsy feet, which brings me to my first design aspect that I find frustrating. Now, this is Ken. Ken is by Eddie Rifkin, and Ken is one of my favourite boost sort of drive pedals out there. Absolutely love this pedal at home. I actually tend to have both of these buttons connected. And the reason being, when I'm playing live with this kind of pedal, and this isn't, I mean, Eddie knows that this isn't personal against Ken. There are lots of pedals out there that do this. They have 2 buttons really close together on this size of pedal. So this size of pedal, if I compare it to the Boss, it's the same sort of size as a Boss pedal, a bit shallower. And when I go to press one, I always press both. My feet just hit both, and I go from no boost to loads of boost, or whatever it may be. So that's my first pet peeve, is when you've got a layout like this and 2 buttons that I just can't make use of because I hit them together every time. My second pet peeve is pedals that are landscape that don't need to be. So this, for instance, fantastic fuzz pedal, but because of its layout, I always have to put it on the board like this. Now, it works like this, but then all of your inputs are in the wrong place. Having it that way, whilst looks cool, isn't very practical, because it then takes up the space of essentially 2 pedals. You know, I can get a standard size pedal and a mini pedal into that space. There is an exception to this rule, and that's when you've got a pedal that has 2 buttons in that layout, because both these buttons I can get to without having to think too hard about it and without having to look down. And also, when you start moving into pedals that are this size, which is almost the same width as that, you know, having a button there and having a button there is fine, because you can hit both of them, as long as the enclosure is justified by what's inside it. Brings me to pet peeve number 3. Enormous pedals that don't have any right to be that big. Fuzz face is a brilliant example of that. You know, fuzz face circuit, you think about an arbiter fuzz face like this sort of size, and the circuit inside it's about this big. It's one of the smallest circuits you can get. It has no right taking up that much space on your pedal board. And I know one of my very good friends, Joe at Hello Sailor, he loves to build a big pedal and have almost nothing in it. It's one of his, I think it's like a game to him or something. But all of these huge pedals, they take up real estate on the pedal board. It means that most of the time I just can't have these cool, funky pedals on the board. I was recently looking at one that was star-shaped. And again, it's just an impractical shape to have on a pedal board when you don't have much space. Which brings me to another pet peeve on size, the Rat. So the Rat is one of my favourite pedals ever built. I love the Rat. I hate these. Because for me to mount this on my pedal board, first of all, again, it's quite sizable when you compare it to other standard sized pedals. But these mean that you can't get Velcro on the bottom of it. So what you have to do is take these off, which then leaves you with this weird little sort of nut that you have to take off as well. So you end up exposing the innards. You then put your Velcro on it and stick it to the board, and then it takes up, you know, twice the space of a couple of these, or I don't know, it just doesn't fit well on a pedal board. So again, it's a pedal that I use all the time at home, but never gigs with me. Or then you get something like this, where again, it's a very simple pedal. It's a tube screamer, but comes in a box that's insanely large. In fact, I can compare it to a real tube screamer. You know, it is significantly bigger than a tube screamer. I mean, it's not all that much wider, but it's just a big box that doesn't need to be a big box. And you look at a tube screamer comparing it to a Boss, they're about the same sort of size. You know, they're I think one was very much influenced by the other, without any shadow of a doubt, even down to the angles that they use on these. But there's no need for a pedal to be this big and this awkward to place on a pedal board. So those are my pet peeves. Dual pedals where you can't press both buttons independently very easily. Landscape where it doesn't need to be landscape. And then stuff that's just too big and bulky and cumbersome to use on a pedal board. But something else I want to sort of ask you about is what you think of these little mini pedals. So mini pedals, I think, are cool if you don't want to use them quickly and live. So one of the problems with a mini pedal is if you've got a few pedals next to each other, they kind of disappear and blend into the background. There's also, I'm just rummaging around for leads. If you put in sort of a standard lead, not a flat lead, but a standard size lead, by the time you're finished, it's actually, I don't know if you can see this, it's slightly wider than the Boss pedal. Obviously the Boss will have leads in there as well, but it means that putting these next to each other, if you've only got this type of lead where it's kind of the fat back of it, isn't going to save you a great deal of space. Which is obviously where top mounting comes in as well. So I was looking at the pedals here. So this is one of my JSA pedals. This is the fat preamp, and it's top loaded. So that means that I can have this and this. So this is a clean machine. I can have both of those right next to each other, and they take up about as much space as one of those, kind of. Whereas if I've got, say, I'm just rummaging here now, but say I've got these two pedals next to each other, because they are side mounted, they have to have a little bit of a gap between them, especially as the power supply is on the side here. So there you go, pet peeve number 4, I think, power supply is on the side. Now, side mounted I don't mind too much, because if you've got sort of a board like this, is this kind of wide, you have one pedal here and one pedal here. Top mounted is fine for the pedals at the top of the board, but the pedals down here you need side mounted, because otherwise you're pushing up into the one above it. So, you know, I'm not too stressed about side versus top, but I do dislike it when the jack goes in the side. And also I don't know if I've got any here, one that really drove me mad was I had a top-mounted pedal, but the power supply went in the side, so it kind of just erased the value of being top-mounted. There you go. So 4 pet peeves then. So buttons too close together, landscape when it should be portrait, far too big, and badly positioned jacks. So, like, if you're going to have it that way and have your jacks out here, that's a bit pointless, but obviously it makes more sense this way around. If you are going to have top mounted jacks, don't have a power supply going into the side, that kind of thing. And if you're going to use mini pedals, make sure they do actually save you space, or they sound good enough to be justified on the board on their own, or they're going to be an always on. So if you use something like an EP boost style pedal, you might just have this always on and just sort of sat at the side or under or next to the board or something. What are your pet peeves? What are the things that you wish pedal designers would take into account a bit more? Do you love eclectic pedals that are enormous and you kind of just want to carry a big old tank around with you and place it on the floor? Do you have roadies that carry your gear for you? Don't know. Let me know in the comments, like, subscribe, and I'll see you all again soon. Cheers.